lifestyle. So what we eat, sleep, how we move, how we connect, how we rest. And so really, like, we cannot keep medicating something that's rooted in lifestyle. You know, lifestyle problem, we need a lifestyle approach and a lifestyle solution. And that's what I do in clinic. And I also have online courses, and a real passionate advocate for the food and farming industry as well, recognizing how important our nutrition is in health. But today we're talking a little bit more about the connection piece. I entitled this, stand in your power and own your story. And it's really interesting because we often, I don't have so much resistance from people talking about nutrition and health, or people are starting to understand the importance of sleep and the importance of stress, and it's quite easy that people know that they need to be moving. But often people, when I talk about connection, they're always a little bit taken about what's that got to do with health. But the science is really robust, actually, that disconnection with ourselves and disconnection with other people and disconnection from our sense of purpose and disconnection from nature are real potent drivers in disease. They're really stressful when we have those fractures within us, and can manifest in our physical bodies as physical illness. And so I love talking about connection. And today we have somebody that I'm hoping will help give you tools about how we can reconnect, particularly with ourselves. And I think one of the things I've been really pondering the last few months is trying to define actually, what health is. And if you kind of look in the dictionary, health often is about sort of a physical and a sort of mental perfection, really. And yet I know many, many healthy people who actually are fairly miserable, not particularly nice to be around. And to me, they wouldn't summon up, an idea and a picture of health. And conversely, I know people who have a number of disease labels and yet full of life and vibrancy and impacting, those around them. And I think I'm kind of landing on this idea that actually health isn't about the absence of disease or the absence of suffering and pain, but it's about a sort of emotional, physical resilience and agility to kind of use all things, for our growth and our wholeness. And I think one of the things that I see that opposes that, particularly in my profession, is that we have a real thing about segregating everything. We have segregated the different parts of the body. You have a doctor for everything, from the skin to the liver to the hip to the knee. And specialization is wonderful. And the NHS, our health system here, is wonderful too. I had a daughter born with her fingers joined together, a congenital hand condition. And when we first had it operated on, we just had a general pediatric plastic surgeon, and he did a terrible job. And when we had it reoperated on, I went and found the most experienced hand surgeon that I could in order to do, the best job they could. So specialization is really, really important. But our body, the science is very, very clear. Like, we are an integrated network, sort of web of interactions. And so we need to view our body as a whole. But it doesn't just stop there. Like, in our scientific approach over the last few centuries, we have also sort of segregated the body and the mind. And we seem to have this approach still prevalent in our training and thinking that says, if you have a physical problem, it must be, that it must be from the body. The problem must be in the body. If you have a mind problem, it must be in the brain. Where again, like, it is really sort of robust science that actually there is an incredible amount of communication between the body and the mind. And just as actually you might have an emotional problem that comes out as a physical ailment like abdominal pains or migraines, equally you might have a physical problem like inflammation in your gut that manifests an emotional emotional sort of disarray or depression or behavioral issues. And we need to understand that actually we can't segregate these things. And then I think, sadly, we have this segregation between a sort of internal life and the outward life that we build. And, we're born with such amazing potential, so much curiosity. And yet somewhere along the line, we're kind of told what body shape is acceptable, what color is acceptable, what education is acceptable, what belief is acceptable. And often we can end up building a life that actually doesn't reflect who we are. It reflects all of those influences around us in a desire to sort of fit in and please. And I see this fracture line in what somebody is and the life that they're building. And I see that this also manifests, in unrest and in unhealth as well. And I think the solution is this integration, integration of our whole body, integration of the body and mind, and an integration between that inner and outer life. And I see health not as this kind of destination where, where we finally arrive, but I think health is an invitation to an adventure where we constantly get to heal, we constantly get to recreate ourselves on that journey to sort of fullness and wholehearted living. And I think like we're going to be looking at that connection piece to self. And I don't know about you, but sometimes, I'm a mum of 3 girls. I'm running my own business. I have a bit of a portfolio career. And I've learned that actually for me, self-care requires a lot of time alone and solitude and quiet. So trying to make that happen in a busy life is really hard. And I think like, that journey of kind of growing and learning who we are and forging that life that we want to be living, requires lots of tools. And tonight we're going to explore one tool, and it might resonate with you and it might be right for your season, but there are many, many other tools. When I think about my own growth, my own marrying that inner and outer life and creating that life that I want to live and grow in my health, like there's been books and authors at times, there's courses I've done, there is certain people that have been helpful. I've had psychotherapy at times, and so there's different things at different times. And I think it's about really listening internally about what resonates for you at this time. And I'm hoping in the months to come that we'll do more of these, and I'll introduce you to just different people and different tools. For example, last year, I did art at A level when I was 18. I'm 46, and I really wanted to go into art, and I never did. And I hadn't picked up any paints for years. And last year, I did a course with Lewis Parsons. He actually painted that picture behind me. And it was all about sort of rediscovering your kind of soul life. And I hadn't picked up paints in 26 years. And it was the most healing thing I did for 12 weeks. Really helped me find the courage to do what I needed to do for my next season of life and step up into a fuller life. And so I want to introduce you to Hannah. So Hannah Miller is the founder of a company called Sidekick, that uses strengths. Well, she'll tell you what it is. I'm going to bodge it up. But anyway, what I want to tell you about Hannah is that I've known her for some years. We met through our husbands. And she's one of those people that when you've been with her, you come away listened to, you feel seen, you feel known, and you feel valued. And she has this sort of energy that makes you laugh. Like, I find having fun really hard, and I need people in my life to help me laugh, and she would be one of them that does that. And so I just want to wholeheartedly recommend her to you. I love her Instagram. She can be found as Hannah Lou Miller on Instagram. And every morning, if you want something that's just uplifting and start your day, she's great to read. She is also a mum of 3 boys, so we often compare stories. I'm a mum of 3 girls. She's a mum of 3 boys. So she's doing real life. And so I really want to recommend you to her. I'm just going to pin her so next to me so we can see her. Fab. Hannah, it's an absolute joy to have you with me tonight. So please, like, we've got all these lovely people wanting to sort of grow in that inner life and discover who they are. So just tell me about you and tell me how you got into what you're doing.
Okay. Hello, everyone. It's really great to be with you. Thanks for letting me come and join your webinar masterclass tonight. So who am I? I'm Hannah. And as you said, Sally, I've got three sons. I've got three boys who are 12, 15, and just turned 18 last week. So we had quite a milestone in the Miller household, which was a big deal. They're big deals, these moments. You suddenly get a piece of post that says your son is eligible to vote, and it's a big moment in the house. So yeah, I've got three sons. They keep me pretty busy, a husband and a dog. Only one furry animal, although I'd like more than that. And I'm very jealous of Sally's collection that she's growing. How did I get into what I'm doing? I'll try and be as succinct as I can. My background actually is teaching. So similar to Sally, been part of the public service for a long time in the world of education. And I did love what I did for a very long time. There were things that were very frustrating and challenging. I worked in a very inner city part of Birmingham, which I loved very much. But a day sort of came where I knew I was heading into a time of transition, which I'm sure lots of you have experienced. It's really uncomfortable. Anybody who's had a baby will know what transition feels like. It's that moment when you think you're really far away and actually it's time for something new. And I think I felt this very uncomfortable period where I felt quite disconnected, to use the language that Sally's mentioned, and sort of segregated from myself in a very, very busy and grieving season, actually, some hard moments. But out of that came a sort of a new idea and a new season, which was to take my love of development of people and move it into having my own business. So like Sally, I've got my own business, and I work with all sorts. So I work with charities and corporates and teams all over the place, supporting their development. But the real probable love of what I do, although I love to do that, my absolute favorite is working with individuals who are longing to find more about their sense of purpose. So I work with individuals through the digital course and community I've got called the Purpose Pursuit. And that is me. And I'm based in Birmingham, if you can't tell. I'm from the Midlands. Those of you who are UK based, I'm right in the centre of the UK, and very proud of that.
Fab. So, Hannah, you use something called Strength Finders. Can you tell us what that is and what that tool is, and how you find it helpful maybe in your own life to begin with?
Yeah, sure. So Strengths Finders, which is also now known as Clifton Strengths because they've sort of renamed it, same thing exactly. I'm sure some of you may have heard of it. It is simply a tool, but it's a very effective tool, in my opinion, in helping people discover more about their unique contribution. I think one of the things I find, whoever I'm talking to, whether it's a CEO to a graduate or anything in between, is that they often don't quite understand their personal contribution, and things that feel very normal and natural to them, they underestimate and think, oh, well, everybody can do that. And probably the key thing that I do in my job is say to people, no, not everybody can do that. Just because it feels natural to you, just because it's the way you think, the way you communicate, the way you get things done, the way you influence, that is because you were born to do that. So the strengths assessment, the Clifton Strengths, the Strengths Finder, to use all the different language around it, is designed to help you see your natural areas of talent. Talent being the ways of behaving, the ways of feeling, the ways of doing that come most naturally to you. I often give the analogy of children. So like Sally and I have got teenagers, and when you've got teenagers or children of any age, actually, you often see who they are in a very raw form, don't you? You know, you see the potential of what they're going to be, but it's in this messy black and white. You know, they could have a real strong sense of justice, but it comes out as this black and white opinion, or they could be a real includer and they feel emotion. You know, you see that, and we are just adults that grow up a bit, and those raw talents that we sort of mature into, we often forget are the things that differentiate us from one another. So my job is to use the strengths tool and some coaching to support people towards going, that's why that makes me feel alive. That's why that's exhausting. That's why Sally wants to make sure she has time alone, because that is what her strengths needs. That's what she needs to do. So that's what the strengths tool is. In terms of the science, there's a lot of science behind it. Won't go into that tonight, but 25 million people have used it. It's known to make a difference on engagement, and essentially engagement is a measure of how happy we are at work. So happiness at work is to do with connection to meaning and doing the things that we're meant to do with the hours that we are awake, whether it's paid work or unpaid work, it doesn't matter.
And So I remember sort of in my 20s first doing some team stuff. We were working for Medair, which was an aid agency, and
Yeah.
I think initially I had used the Myers-Briggs. It
Yeah.
was back then, and then also I've used something called the Enneagram, and I've also used Strength Finders, and all these things are tools to help us understand who we are, the unique way that we're made. And I just, because I remember, like, I grew up, I have to be careful, my mum's on, but I grew up in quite an extroverted, sort of spontaneous, fun house. And I just always thought there was something wrong with me. And actually, when I started doing some of this personality finding stuff, I realized that actually I'm deeply introverted, and I get a lot of my energy from being on my own. And also I'm a big feeler, so I feel everything that's going on in my environment, and it's totally exhausting
Yeah.
if you don't have any boundaries around that. And I just remember it being so helpful having language to understand, you know, who we are and how we're made. And so how do people, you know, get in touch with that tool that you're
That
using?
particular tool. I mean, I think just to pick up on that point, it is about understanding some permission, isn't it? That these are
Mm,
the things that I need in order for me to bring my best. These are
mm,
things I need. And just before I get into the practicalities, I've noticed such a lot through the pandemic that because people have had to be so out of shape, whether that's extroverted people or introverted people, needs have not been met. So if we use that as Sally, I was working with a CEO on Friday, and she actually has a really quite poorly husband. They've been working at home, and she has very similar strengths to you. And she said to me, for the first time in ages on Friday, I'm getting in the camper van and I'm going on my own and I'm alone for 4 days. I am desperate. And her intellection, her sort of her internal strengths desperately needed that. On the flip side, my dad, who is 80, who is incredibly sociable man, has found the lack of social variety incredibly hard. He's found not being able to do those chit chats that he's so good at with anybody wherever he goes. He's found that shrinking really hard. So I think I would say to you all, you know, pay attention to what's gone on in those moments, because we have been all of us, to one shape or another, have been out of shape in the way we like to work, and finding that equilibrium again is going to take some time. In terms of how you take the strengths assessment, it's something that you can get hold of yourself. I think the link's been put into the chat. It's an online profiling tool. What I do with my job is I support people through that process of understanding, but the tool is right there for you to go use at Gallup. It's £20 for the top 5 assessment, or it's £50 for the whole thing. So it's quite accessible actually in terms of its the costs there. But what you really need is the unpicking around that, the sort of the feedback on how it works, and understanding not just these words that appear. So like if we pick on Sally's got strategic, she's got connectedness and empathy. She mentioned that deep connection to people around her, feeling stuff. She's got that discipline, that need to bring some order and rhythm. Rather, she's not doesn't want to be fly by the seat of her pants. You know, those are some of the needs that her character has, and desperately needs to have as part of what she brings to her work, what she brings to her children, what she brings to her relationships, and that just time to connect with nature, connect with beauty, to slow down and to be present in the moment is crucially important for Sally. And so having that sort of chance to sort of in-depth look at it is very, very important. So make sure if you're going to go ahead and get the tool, that you give it some really good time and deep dive into it so that it can make a difference and impact you.
And what do you see, Hannah, like, what do you see? There's so many pressures on us as men and women. We've got men on as well. Sometimes I forget, you know, we're so used to, I'm so used to talking to other women, but, you know, what do you think are the things that stop us living from that place? Like there's the process, isn't there? There's a process where we start to understand how we're made, what we need, you know, and to actually then giving ourselves permission to forge that life that can create an environment so that we can thrive and we can be healthy. What in your work, what do you see as some of the obstacles to that?
That's a really good question. I think there is a few. I think there is a perception of perhaps a trajectory that we were on, that we think this is what was expected of us, and this was what I thought I should be. And it can be quite a big deal to take a left turn at that point and think, actually, maybe that isn't what I should have done, and that was for all the wrong reasons. I think in the early part of life, there's a lot about being validated by other people or growing what we think success might look like, and therefore we can chase the wrong things, that then can make us unhappy. But then we find ourselves in a position where we have a mortgage to pay, if we're talking about paid work, you know, a mortgage to pay or responsibilities, and we can't just walk away from all those responsibilities and go, I don't want to do that anymore. You know, most people aren't in that position, so there can also be a real fear of failure. And I think often when I talk to people, they're scared to say out loud some of the things that are in their heart, and they just need a bit of courage or space to just begin to think about those things. And it's not that people have to take a 180 or 90-degree turn immediately. It's about, what does 1 or 2 degrees towards those things look like for you? And what do you need to start to build into your life to start to make change? You know, I often feel like it's very important that I say that I don't sell utopia. I don't sell perfection. You know, we don't suddenly have this, oh, look at this, I'm now using my strengths and I've got the most perfect job. But it's about, how can I actually have sense of purpose myself in what I'm doing and meaning, because that is not selfish. It means that you can give your best to the world around you. You know, the more you're in that place of meaning and purpose, the more alive you are, the more impact you can have on your loved ones and the people that you're around. And actually, sometimes we think we're making really good choices with our time and we're making ourselves present for others, but we're so deeply unfulfilled that we're not really very present at all. So I think responsibility is a big one, and the thought that this means I'm being selfish or reckless. And then another really big one is actually, well, who am I to think I can do these things? I mean, I struggle with that nearly every day of my life, and it's my job to support people through that. So but that whole who do you think you are voice, who do you think you are to even think that's possible for you, is a massive player, to be honest. And having the courage to say, I'm going to go and spend some time to look at this, is, to be honest, that's all it takes. And then people begin to make those changes.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on a few things. I think certainly with the people I work with, this idea that it's selfish and self-indulgent can be a real barrier, where you know, there's a responsibility for children or other people, and you know, and it seems a selfish thing to invest in yourself. And yet, you know, I often say, you know, certainly the experience of my own life is like, actually, you know, it's not selfish, because I think when you invest in yourself and you give yourself permission to explore these things and put some things in place that bring you life, actually you have so much more than to give, you know, those around you, whether that is your children or whether, you know, that is a partner or with work. And I certainly think, you know, with my girls, I learned very early on, having my girls, I had really bad postnatal depression for the first few years and was very poorly, and I learned very early on that I had to take time away. And my husband was great in really supporting me with that, and it meant, you know, not so much money for our family holidays. It meant, you know, it was really inconvenient on him, and we used up holiday pay for him to look after the kids, and the house was a total wreck, for the kids were alive when I came back. But one of the things that I feel like I have instilled in my girls is that actually I think I've put in them, you know, that they will learn how to self-care and the importance of it. And that kind of sense of, actually we're working as a family unit, and you know, and there's times where we all make sacrifices so that we can all function better. And I think as women, well, women and men, there's a degree of permission as well, where people almost feel the need to be given permission to go on that journey. I had a patient just before Christmas. She's in her 60s, totally delightful. We're doing a health plan with her, and she came back 3 or 4 months later just glowing. And I swear all I did was gave her permission to be who she just wanted to be. She just didn't have the courage to cut down on work. She didn't have the courage to say to family, no, this is what I need in order to feel good about myself. But so it is really challenging.
I think there's so many time pressures, and this whole idea around scarcity, and like you just said, will there be enough to go around or enough time? And I have to say I battle with that all the time. I'm in the busiest period my life will probably ever be in, with the the multiple needs of the age that children are. These are the squashed years, to use anybody's perspective, they would agree they're very fulfilling, but they squish time hugely, and there's a lot of juggle that goes on, and a lot of guilt. But I think I'm trying to learn, and I have to say I take a lead from people like Sally and think, she's got it, she's got this right, and it is right, and I need to remember this, is that when I prioritize my day correctly or my week correctly, it's better for everybody, myself included. It's better for everybody around me when I do that. And in many ways, you grow time when you make that kind of time, which I find very hard. If you're listening on this call, I don't find rest easy, just to be totally honest. And what rest looks like is different for everybody. What you find restful, what is going to be replenishing, is very different from person to person, depends on who you are and what you need. But permission to do something for no other reason than the joy of it, or because you want to, is a very different choice with your time than because you have to. And I think that's probably a very important part of understanding what rest is.
Yeah. It's very countercultural, isn't it? I mean, there's just so many demands on our time in terms of being the perfect employer, the perfect mother, the perfect, wife, and just so many demands, and that need to just take back some control and putting some things in place that we value, around our self-care and around what our families need. It is really, really challenging, but I think it's one of the most life-giving things. And I think what we're seeing is just a huge amount of illness because of stress and lack of sleep, and the demand and the fracture between, our sort of emotional health and our physical health. And I think it does come back. It just coming back to some basics around putting those things in place. How do you create your rhythms? Like, do you sit with your family? How do you do it?
What was the question? Do you what with your family?
How do you create your rhythms? Like, just practically, like, because we forget. Because I'm disciplined, I'm like, well, every Sunday this is what I do. So how do you create those things that help you sustain and your family thrive?
So for the sake of the rest of you, discipline is very low on my report. So this shows it can work for whatever personality you are. I do like rhythm and I do like structure, even though I'm not brilliant at keeping it. I think what I've begun to learn for me is I'm trying to chunk time, and I've tried to look at my week as a whole and think about what things I want to happen within that week. I think things I've learned are that I actually do appreciate some time in the morning before anyone has woken up, if I can get it. It's not my preferred moment of the day. Actually, I'm quite a night owl, but I long for that time for myself to be ready for everyone else to enter that space. I saw something on the internet this week and it said I just need 5 or 6 hours of alone time and then I'm ready for everyone. And I think, to be honest, I need about 10. I think that's one of the things I've recognized is that helps me. Another thing that helps ill-disciplined people, and I'm not even joking, is I have a dog. It's hugely helpful to me to have a dog because I love her so much, and so I want to walk her. So whereas I would not go to the park and walk, I have a dog, so therefore I do. I wouldn't do it because of my personality, and my personality is you make every moment count, you work your backside off, you don't go for a walk. How ridiculous. Well, I will for my dog. Okay, I mean that shows I'm a little bit, I've got some work to do. I just have a therapist. It's fine. I know I've got work to do and I am still working on me and some of those erroneous messages. but she helps hugely with that. I have a faith, so I try to spend some time with God as well and carve that time out, because I'm a better person if I do. So my faith and spirituality is important. And I think some of the other things I'm learning to do is that as well as I'm more extroverted than Sally and I love connection with people, I think wherever you are on the extroverted, introverted spectrum, I've become more and more convinced that we need connection time with others and we need connection time with self, and everybody needs both. I think either is really out of kilter. If you let yourself go too into the internal space and you can manage on your own, that's not good. And I think if you don't know how to be alone and you don't know how to do self, that's also not good. And we're going to sit on a spectrum within those things. So to answer the question about how do I make it work, I actually tend to look at a week at a time. So rather than necessarily this will be my 6 a.m, this is what I'll do at that day, I try to on a Sunday or at some point look at my week ahead and block in the things I know I'm going to need and think about it like that. So it's not always the same every week, but when can I maybe have that bit longer time? Which day I know is going to be really frantic and I probably won't get any of that, but this Thursday maybe I can take a longer walk at lunchtime or go for a run or see a friend for a walk. So I try to look at a week as a whole for me rather than a day as a whole. Where I am failing for the purposes of vulnerability is where I'm failing is I'm too distracted, and that's what I'm working on at the moment. So because of my personality being quite responsive and quick, my personality is quick, I suppose is how I'd put it, I'm learning that I can be too distracted. And so I've started to try and do some more peaceful practices such as yoga to encourage me to become more present. So that's a new thing for me that I'm really working on. One last point on that, again, we're slightly off the top, but it's all important. You know, my therapist said to me that there was a couple of things I was not prioritizing, we were talking about, and you know, she spoke quite firmly with me about at what point do I think it's okay to be so I could do those things for other people, but I didn't think it was okay for me to do those things for myself. So I think when we don't prioritize ourselves, it is important to think about what messages we, you know, if we can feel the worth for others but we don't feel the worth for ourselves, there's something that we've still got to work on. So that's what I'm currently working on, is that those things.
Well done. It is this journey though, isn't it? It's constant growth. I think the amazing thing is we can get to continually recreate ourselves. Like if we can adopt this growth mindset and that life's never over, like every decade we can you know, grow into something new. Just to, because I know some people, I loved your comment about the introversion and extroversion. Yeah. So just for some people, like introversion isn't that we don't like people. Introversion is that we get our energy from being on our own, and extroversion would be you'd get your energy and buzz, you know, from being around people. And I completely agree. Like I could go for days, never speak to anybody, not have any music on, and very, very happy in my own company. But I've recognized over the years that if I do that and I'm not in a great mental place, that I can spiral, and actually my discipline, if you like, is friendship. Bless, you know, my friends are so gracious with me because I can go for weeks and not contact them, and I realize like I have to consciously make an effort to stay in connection because I know it's so important. Like I made that comment earlier about you know, I don't find it easy to sort of have fun and laugh. It's just not in me. But and that's why I need to have certain people in my life, because I am fun, but I just, you know, I need to choose to have those people to sort of draw that out of me. But so I just wanted to, because I think sometimes people kind of pigeonhole the introvert and extrovert, and I think it's only about preference, isn't it? And what, you know, I think what I wanted to ask you next was about who are the voices that call out your courageous self? Because I think all of us have lived with that. You know, courage isn't the absence of fear, is it? We do it afraid. You know, we all have our imposters. You know, we all have the doubt. You know, the greater the risk, the greater the doubt. And And we need those voices that call us to be courageous. And I wondered who they were in your life. Are there particular, authors or friends? Who is it that you allow you to kind of really bring the best out in you?
That's a really good question. I agree with the idea of having people who speak courageously to you. And I think one of the things I've thought of in the last couple of years is people who believe for more for you. They have quite an expansive view of the world and of who you can be. That's been a voice that's been really important to me in the recent years of my life, actually. And I think if we're thinking about individuals that I've found quite inspiring that we will know around this table, I mean, there's the obvious people of I love the work of Brené Brown, and I love the way she sort of, that's going to be, I'm sure there's plenty of people here that love what she says and what she represents and what she speaks of. I also was really impacted last year by Melinda Gates's book called The Moment of Lift, and I found her story really incredible, again, of courage and using her strengths to make a difference. And for me, a big part of purpose and meaning is about how we can then use who we are to support others and to lift others. And so I love listening to stories of individuals who have carved out a life that gives them a great sense of purpose, and then they do what they can to elevate other people to that space. And on a more personal level, my big sister has been a really important person of speaking courage to me. She's one of those people who I think she would always want more for me than for her. She's the most incredibly selfless person. So she's always doubly proud of me. She's 8 years older than me. And so I came along and she was very pleased about that. And so I know, like, everything I do, she's massively a cheerleader for. And you need people that will just, whoever they are in your life, whether they're friends, blood relatives, whether they're inspirational individuals, I think that just believe you can do things that you don't believe you can do yourself. And I think it's having vulnerable spaces where you can say, I'm petrified to do this, and have people that believe you can. So yeah, those are definitely things that speak courage to me. And the whole word courage, it's all about taking heart. It's about your putting your whole heart in, even when you feel like, I can't do this, and it scares the living daylights out of me. It's about take your heart and give your whole heart, even though it feels scary.
Yeah, so I also love Brené Brown. For those that aren't familiar with her, she's actually I don't know, a researcher, social worker. She leads an organization that trains leaders, and she has a great podcast called Embracing You, or Dare, and there's another one, Dare to Lead. I found podcasts really helpful over the last few years. Really enjoyed listening in on some of the stories. So again, Brené Brown, she's interviewed some great women, and often if I'm feeling overwhelmed, full of doubt, she would be one of my go-tos, like just plug in and have a listen and get some perspective. And so yes, really helpful. And it's really interesting about the voices that we let in, because I think we have a responsibility of, actually, there's some voices to keep out. So certainly in my sort of lifetime, I've found, a couple of friends where I've got to a point in friendships where I thought, when I'm around you, I feel small, I don't feel listened to, and I feel belittled. And I think identifying that, and actually we still do things together, but I realize I don't let their voice into those sacred places. I don't invite them into my real low moments, and so I think recognizing, I have a list of the voices who I would turn to in my vulnerable moments, and and it's a fairly short list of that I would phone up, that I know I can phone up. I know I won't be judged. I know I will be loved. They won't try and fix me, because often I just need to be listened to. And I think it is really important to actually nail that down in our life. Like, who are we letting speak into those sacred parts? Who are we, and are they calling out courage? Or are actually they trying to keep us small?
I think That's a good point about friends. And I think that friends can be wonderful, loving parts of our lives. But the whole point of friendship is often around loving you as you are. So when you want to grow, a friend can't necessarily see that perspective because they just like, well, you're great as you are. So sometimes you need those other voices that are actually pushing you towards more, because a friend is sort of like, oh, don't do that, it's lovely as you are. They don't want you to be different. And there's a scariness, isn't there, about growing and changing and how that might impact a friendship. I definitely think that friendships can go through seasons as we grow and change, and it can be quite a weird experience.
Yeah, totally. And so I do think we do need to take responsibility about those voices that we allow, into not just friendship, but the things that we're watching. And we actually have a lot of control over, over what we let into our hearts. And there's some amazing stuff out there. Same with social media. Sometimes I read stuff and I think, oh, it just makes me feel crap. And I think we still need to be challenged. I'm not saying we just create these nice little things where we just feel comfortable. That's not what it's about. Growth is uncomfortable. We need to normalize pain. That's part of the process. But actually, we do have a lot of agency over the voices that we let into our lives to help us grow. I was just looking at some of these questions. Oh yeah. So anyway, sorry, I haven't got my glasses on, I'm like squinting. Fab, great. So tell me a bit about your course that you're doing, because it'd be lovely if people want to connect with you, and I would love to. I want to come on your course.
Okay, so the work that I do with individuals is called the Purpose Pursuit. So if people want to find out in a more sort of in-depth way about what their next steps might be, maybe they're suffering with a bit of low confidence, or they have lost themselves a little bit. I remember one woman I worked with, she put it so well. She said, I feel like who I am is buried under a pile of washing most of the and I just thought that's exactly what so many people hit a point that they feel like. So in the pandemic, when everything changed and we were all doing our reassessment of life, I thought, how can I support people better with what I've learned over the years? So I recorded a digital course, which is called the Purpose Pursuit, but it's run as a community. So people do it at the same time every term. There are then live sessions that accompany that, and a collective people can be involved with. So I'm really proud of it because I know it makes a difference, and it's something that really gives people tangible tools if they want to take the time. Like anything, you've got to take the time and effort. So the current cohort is on week 2. We're currently in the middle of it. If people do want to find out more, and they either head to my Instagram or head to my website, you can go on the the wait list to find out more. It will run again in the autumn, so people will be able to join in come September. We'll kick it all off again. So yeah, I just guide people through a process of self-discovery, using strengths, using a deep dive into personal talents, but also the role that purpose plays. I really believe in purpose and meaningful. When I use the word work, I mean what we do with that. Daytime, I don't mean whether you're paid or not. Meaningful purpose to what we do. So over that period of time together, we journey on that. And we've had some amazing stories from the last cohort, people finding new meaning or new jobs, or going into training, or having the courage to resign and start something else. And I'm not suggesting everyone should do that. For some people, it's a tweak in their life, but it gives them a real confidence boost. And just to say, we had people from the age of 18 all the way up to people in their 80s, people at every point of their life wanting to think, what does the next decade hold for me, and how do I make sure I'm ready for it? So it's called the Purpose Pursuit, and it's run termly together.
It's amazing. Tell me more about purpose. Why is that so important to you, and what is purpose? And so I agree with you. Like, I see in my work, when people become disconnected from their purpose, it has an impact on their physical and mental health, and that actually reconnection with purpose can be really powerful in terms of healing. But what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think it's always been a favorite word, the idea of purpose, always, what's my purpose? And I don't necessarily mean like an existential crisis, what's my purpose? Although I have had many of those moments as well. Purpose for me is about really being connected to the person that you are and what you contribute, and getting the opportunity to do that in something that feels meaningful. And for me, purpose is about yourself, but it is also about the generosity of what you do with your gifts and talents. So I think when you're really in your purpose, it's partly about your values and partly about your strengths and talents, and it's partly about how you are showing up and sharing that with your community, whatever that community may be. I read again another book that really impacted me. It's called Life on Purpose by Dr. Vic Stretcher, Dr. Vic Stretcher, and he talks very much about this. He had an adult daughter in her sort of late teens, early 20s. She died quite tragically, and he went through quite a loss of purpose, which came through the grief process. And as a scientist, he then began to devote his life into this very unscientific topic of purpose, and what does purpose mean. And he found himself realizing that although he was quite a scientifically minded person, that he was losing his sense of purpose through the grief that he went through. And he now spends his life helping people find that sense of purpose, which I also want to be one of those people like him in my own way. And so for me, purpose is when your natural talents and strengths are aligning with that generosity to self and the community that you're in. So by the community you're in, I mean maybe your family, or I might mean the city you're in, or a cause that you feel a sense of connection to, so that there is something that you do. People who live the most fulfilled lives have a sense of commitment to something that is beyond their own bettering. And that's what I think is often a missing piece. So you could be doing a great job and loving your job, but the missing piece being is, where's that sense of purpose in that? And I challenge people that you don't have to find it in your paid work. You can find it in any part of what you're doing, but there needs to be that sense of purposefulness to really live the most full life, and in my opinion. And also the data suggests it. So Gallup talk about community well-being, and the people who have a sense of community well-being have the best outcomes in their lives of anybody.
And I think Hannah, maybe you can give some tips to this. But one of the things I see that often, when our life situation changes, for example, when we go from working to having children, or we go from having children to then leaving home, or we go to retirement. I mean, often you see them as quite difficult times because some identity changes. I mean, do you have tips about how do you navigate those times to reconnect with purpose, besides going on your course? But
yeah, that's a really good point, because transition moments in life are big deals, aren't they? They really are. What I remember, Sally, really clearly, when I'm my mum and dad's youngest child, and I remember I was back at home before I got married, and my mum was ironing clothes for me for my honeymoon. I was very young actually when I got married. Just full disclosure, I was pretty young, and
it was legal.
It was legal. I was 19, but that's pretty young in this day and age. I was 19 years old and I'm still married, so it's okay.
Same man.
Same man. Yeah, 22 years now. But I remember saying to my mum, oh, Mum, thank you for ironing my clothes. It was just a throwaway comment like that. And she just stopped and she said, well, who am I going to... It's okay. I love to do those things. Who am I going to do that for now? And she had this moment of like, I'm at the end of an era. You're my last child. You're literally leaving. And you're fully going. And of course, new seasons come, but transition is tough, and we need helpful guides through transition. We don't have to experience it to understand that transition is tough. But what I think can help is when you know what you do well. You can do that in different seasons and different ways with different people, because that purpose statement can be across that. So I do encourage people to think about a personal purpose statement, which should lean into those natural strengths and talents, but they are not situationally bound. So if you're somebody who's very empathic and you have a heart to, you can connect with people like that, well, that is your gift and talent, whether it's with your children, whether it's with your grandchildren, whether it's with your neighbour or your colleagues, or being a school governor, or whatever environment you're in, that is your strengths and talent, regardless of the container. And that if you can remember who you are, that you are not defined by those it's situational environments, you can bring it to the other ones. So what we want to do is find those threads of our life,
Yeah.
that go through the different seasons, that we can still be that person. If I can bring joy, if that's one of the things that I do, well, I want to do that, whether it's with my kids, or whether it's with Sally, or whether it's with a live webinar, or at the supermarket with the cashier. And I think if you can try and help people to narrow it down to 2 sentences of what is it I really can bring, that can transcend all those environments, and give you that sense of self and purpose outside of the markers in the sand that society say, well, this is what gives you your worth or sense of purpose, because none of it should actually.
I mean, it's a fascinating thing, I think, particularly around retirement. I mean, it seems such an odd thing anyway, retirement, really. And just that transition, when work and often we find so much purpose, or for many people, they find purpose in their work. So I think it's lovely, that idea of just finding a different expression, and realizing the value is in who you are, not that bit that we were living it out through during that season of life. But
And
yeah,
being intentional about the next season is important. When you are going to retire, it's like, well, what is going to make sure I still feel that sense of fulfillment? What do I, there's no reason we have to drop off a cliff when our children move on, or when our job, our paid work finishes. There's huge contribution to be made, and what freedom there is to bring it. And the one thing I would say about retirement is the world is crying out for wise individuals to input into younger people's lives. I've never seen more the number of 20 somethings who want to hang out with me is just simply because they're desperate for a bit of maturity around them. So I'd say to anybody who's got some time on their hands, go find somebody younger than you and mentor them. Gosh, it will give you more purpose than anything. There are so many young people out there desperate for that. So for me, that kind of thing is a real way to find a sense of purpose, and sharing the wisdom of your experience, those that don't have that yet.
Yeah. Have you got any wisdom for young mums? It's a hard time, isn't it? So we've both had young children, and certainly for me, I had really bad, postnatal depression, as I said, and gosh, yeah, I just what wisdom, because it's tough, it's a tough season for many people, and when there's just a physical exhaustion. I mean, do you have some wisdom there for young mums?
Yeah, that's really good. It is tough. It's physically demanding. And I remember those years. I remember those days that were like utter write-offs, and the days that went really well, and everything in between. I think it is, again, about knowing what you need and taking the time to know what you need. And by that, I don't mean being with, I was very much with my children and didn't have a lot of opportunities. So I need to go away for 2 weeks or whatever. I don't really mean that. I mean, what do you need in your weekly rhythms of being able to manage? I knew I needed community, and for me that was really important. And I went, and for me, I know that in the pandemic this has been difficult, but I know some people hate them, but actually I had a great group of toddler mom friends. I was very lucky that I found a non-judgmental group that didn't make me, we literally created interventions. When one of us was having a bad day, we would take the kids away and be like, we looked after each other in that sense. I think the thing I would say to you is to decide what really matters. I gave up the 2 things I did early on. Is I knew I wasn't a perfect mom in any way, shape or form, and I would remember that each day is a new day, and that children are incredibly forgiving. And the other thing I decided I would never do is play the competitive game. So I have never talked about my children, their successes publicly. I will do that privately with the people I choose to, because I don't want to do that, because it just brings out separation and competition that I don't want to be a part of. Don't get me wrong, I'm incredibly proud of my children, but I knew for me it would be triggering and not helpful. So I think it's knowing what things you're going to decide you're going to not cross the line of, and say, I'm not going to do those things. And another thing I found quite helpful was about trying to find gratitude and reframing things as well when I found it hard. And when I was doing a job I really didn't want to do, I tried to turn it into, I get to do this. I get to fill the washing machine for the 15th time today, because there are people who get to be inside those clothes that I can appreciate and love. And I think that's one of the things that has really helped me. But I do think it's about asking for help when you need it. I think it's about what's the other thing I would say? I think it's about reducing your expectations of yourself and deciding what really matters. And I have found that very, very hard, because I think we look at other people and we think in that phase, other people are doing so much better than we are. Look at their immaculate home and immaculate children. And the sooner you can let yourself off the hook and buy the birthday cake, don't just buy it. Don't spend 6 hours in the middle of the night. When my kids said to me, Mum, I don't even really like cake, it was like, praise the Lord, I'm free from the birthday cake shenanigans. Great, we won't make one. Just decide what matters, and those aren't the things that the children remember about you being a mum. They remember about you being there, and the things that we think matter don't matter to them at all. That's my wisdom.
Yeah, no, totally. Lots. Go on.
I'm just going to say, as they get older, for me, with 3 sons, it's about being interested in the things they're interested in, so that they are then they're willing to be interested in the things that I'm interested in. And that was a really important piece of advice I was given many years ago by an elderly lady with sons. And she said, if I want them to be interested in the things that matter to me, I'm going to be interested in their things. So yeah. I watch a lot of rugby, and that's one of the things that I do.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think also, when we've both got children, I think some of the best advice that I got given very early on is that it was actually to do with my eldest daughter. We came back having lived in Uganda and Sudan, and she was born in Uganda, and when we came back, she was skeletal. Like at age 1, she weighed 10 kilos. At age 2, she weighed 10 kilos, and she refused to eat. And I did that whole thing of, you make everything and you stand over them and you're trying to spoon it in and you're doing aeroplanes and the lot. And I remember one of my friends just took me aside and said, Sally, she would do what she sees you doing. Just eat with her. And it stuck with me for the whole time through all of my parenting. It's like one of the reasons that I can tend to sort myself out, my own healing and my own wholeness, and from living for purpose, is that they will catch that and they will see that and they will do that. And so whether it's eating with them or playing with them, or how I self-care, or it's that's probably the greatest gift, this, as we sort our own stuff out, actually that's our gift to our kids, to also make that sort of courageous journey in their own lives to become the best version of who they are as well. So, but yes, fabulous, great. It's been such a pleasure. I just got one question. I have an older lady, 74. Any suggestions about how to share the wisdom?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, where to find the young people? That's a good question. Very, very good point. So I think it did. Sally, help. I mean, there are lots of these young people out there that want it, but it's knowing where you can find them. If you're part of any kind of community where young people are, whether there's a way you could get involved with a local university, depending on where you live, or some sort of mentoring service. There must be some out. It's knowing your community or where you are, I think, or whether you're part of a faith community where some of those people are hanging out. But that is a fantastic question. I think I'd love to explore that with you and help you find what your Home Start is a good organisation. That's a good point there. They are there to support people who are young parents and need that mentoring and support. There's also another one called Safe Families for Children. So there are organisations out there, but I know there's probably mentoring services at universities, etc., where you can get involved. I promise you, they want you. They really do.
Yeah. And actually, I certainly know in this sort of aid work world as well, like they're actually marketing towards that older generation, because they realise that they have the wisdom, the time and the skill to actually do short-term aid, within this country and without. So I think it wouldn't take much more than a bit of an internet search around whether is it babies you want to get alongside, is it young mums, is it students? And quite frankly, everybody wants to be fed. So if you can cook, you can always have somebody around your table, but yes, so I think there's a lot of opportunities for voluntary work, whatever you want to do, regardless of whether that's with mentoring people or other things as well. So
And somebody's just mentioned getting involved with being a school governor. I think that's a really good point, because that gives you a connection to a school community where you could then potentially be paired up with somebody to mentor more specifically. It's a great suggestion.
Yeah. Well, fabulous. So Hannah, people can find you as Hannah Lou Miller, yeah,
Yeah.
on your Instagram, and I really encourage people to sign up, just because it's just encouraging, as you can hear, like so much wisdom and so much energy and so much love for people, and just really authentic. So and also they can find you at your website, which we've popped in the chat, which is Hello Sidekick. Is that right?
Yeah, hellosidekick.co. But if you find my Instagram, there's a link tree on there, and you can find your way to everything else as well.
Yeah. And for those that don't know me, I'm Dr. Sally Bell. You can find me on Instagram there as well, talking about food and farming and health, and then my website is drsallybell.com, which again you can get in contact with any of my courses and any of my work there. So brilliant. I've actually not sort of scheduled a next webinar. I'd just been away for 4 days having a little retreat and thought I would come up with a schedule, but actually was so exhausted. I've just really enjoyed just having a good rest.
For you.
So we'll give it some thought this week about whether, now that lockdown's lifted, whether the community still wants to carry on doing something like this, or whether we try a podcast. I don't know, but I will be in touch. If you want to stay in touch with me, you can sign up to my newsletter on my website, or just pop your interest there in the chat, and we'll be in touch with you to keep you updated. But thank you so much, Hannah, for sharing your wisdom. You really are just one of those amazing good eggs in life, and you really will be on the safe hands if you do that course. It sounds fabulous. I think I feel like doing it. So brilliant. But thank you, and thank you for everybody that's been involved. We will pop this recording on YouTube. Again, it's at Dr. Sally Bell. So if you do want to rewatch it or share it, you can see it there. We'll send the link out to you. But have a great one, and dig deep into your purpose and seeking that wholehearted, healthy life. We are totally for you and with you and cheering you on. And we are on the journey with you. So great. Bless you. All right. Thanks, Hannah.
Thanks, Sally.
Good.